Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Maintenance Monday. As always, Cam Henry here, aka Chin Bags, welcoming you to another awesome week of NFL slates to break down and some guys to target to help your team stay on track or get back on track. So I'm just going to dive right into it this week, guys. It's going to be a pretty quick video, mostly going over just the positional players. There's a lot of injury news, creating some positional value I think we can attack. And there's a lot of names out there I want to get to. So without any further ado, jumping right in at quarterback. As always, we're going to start off with Nick Mullins. He's really going to be the only guy this week who's probably on your waivers. He's only 21% rostered in sleeper app leagues. So most likely going to be out there. There's a chance he's not, but he's for sure going to be the number one added player on waivers this week. Especially if you're a quarterback needy team, pretty much spend whatever you have to budget-wise to get him. He's going to be starting them for at least a few weeks. Garoppolo has that high ankle sprain, which can be a pretty nagging injury, pretty pesty to deal with. So Nick Mullins is probably going to have a fair amount of starts under his belt after the end of the year. And he's a guy who already has a fair amount of starts under his belt to begin with. So he has some experience. He looks at least serviceable when he's out there most of the time. So he's probably going to be a decent play at quarterback, especially if you're needy. He'll get you more than just throwing a guy in that quarterback position and hoping for the best. So Nick Mullins could be the guy. He's definitely going to be the only one on waivers. Maybe Andy Dalton or Ben DiNucci, depending on who's starting in that game. But I don't really trust either of them. The Cowboys have looked so horrible. I don't know how long Mike McCarthy can last if this is how bad they are. Especially with all the young and talented, explosive guys they have. They're just too talented to lose all these games. So, I don't know. I just don't trust those quarterbacks. But that's pretty much it at the position. If you need someone besides that, it's going to have to be a trade probably. But players are kind of getting that trade frenzy, especially with all the NFL trade line deals going down. So, maybe you go out and make a deal, get yourself a quarterback. I don't know. But it's pretty thin on the waivers. But fortunately, at running back, there is some openings. There is some potential starting options available that can get you some points. And first and foremost, out of all those guys, is going to be Jordan Wilkins. Probably the top running back waiver ad this week across all leagues. Jonathan Taylor is battling an ankle injury as well, which could have him sidelined who knows how long. So we'll see how that goes. If he's limited in any capacity for a certain period of time, the only running backs are going to be Nyheim Hines and then Jordan Wilkins. So I probably won't have too many shares of him. I bought into the hype in 2018. This kind of feels like a repeat of that, and it just didn't pay off. He never really did what I needed him to do for me, so I'll probably just stay away this time around, but he will be a hot ad this week, and he's got a tough matchup with Baltimore to get started. So maybe not the guy for me this week. We'll see how it goes. I do want to talk about Eno Benjamin real quick because as of now, Kenyon Drake is still out, leaving Chase Edmonds and Eno Benjamin as the only active running backs on the roster. And I like Eno Benjamin's talent. I think the Cardinals, if they're smart, they could figure out Chase Edmonds and Eno Benjamin is greater than Kenyon Drake, and they don't need to pay him or keep him around, and they'll shop him around a little bit. But who knows? I don't know if that's the way it'll shape up. But if it does, Benjamin will be a great ad, especially if you're in a dynasty league where he's a little bit heavier rostered, about 70%, but he's not rostered in a couple leagues I'm in. So he is floating around out there, and I think that's a smart waiver stash for right now. But other than that, guys, at running back, we have Jalen Richard, 63% owned. Dion Lewis, 53% owned, who scored a touchdown tonight in the New York Giants game against the Buccaneers. And the Los Angeles running back is kind of shaky right now with Darrell Henderson potentially missing some time. He could be putting Cam Akers and Malcolm Brown in a position to succeed there. But that backfield kind of feels like a revolving door with how they're never all healthy at the same time, and it's always two guys picking up the load, and you never know who it's going to be. So that's kind of murky waters in my opinion, but if you do have the right guy, then congrats. He's probably going to score you some points. If not, too bad, so sad. He's probably going to bust pretty bad. So that's about it for running backs, guys, for me this week. It's some injuries have opened up some options there, but for the most part, it's just Henderson with the Rams, and A.J. Dillon is out with COVID. That's something to watch. He was notified Sunday during the game that he tested positive, and he actually played some snaps in that game. So that Packers team and the Vikings team will be something to watch with COVID cases this week moving forward. I don't know how that'll play out. I don't know if it spread at all. Hopefully there'll be no more positives, or maybe his was even a false positive for all we know. But he could be out for at least a few weeks, leaving, if Aaron Jones isn't back and healthy, Jamal Williams is the only reliable back in that backfield. So he might be someone to target if you're a contending team and need some running back help. He could probably help you win the league this year. Has the talent to do it. The Packers are a solid team, especially when they are healthier. But if the running back is going to be a position they're hurt at, Jamal Williams is a pretty good guy to have as your backup option. So as far as wide receivers go this week, guys, there's definitely some injury news with Galladay and T.Y. Hilton, Marlon Humphreys. He got the Rona. Adam Humphreys for the Titans, my apologies. And then some other injuries around the league that might just open up some opportunity for us on the waivers. But starting off with something out of the blue a little bit, I don't remember his first name. I think Darnell Wims from Chicago got suspended by the NFL today for 2 games for his on-field antics and unsportsmanlike conduct. So I'm a little late to the party. The hype train might have left the station on this one a little bit, but I do want to talk about Darnell Mooney. He's already 80% owned on sleeper leagues, which bummed me out a little bit. But he is a little bit more under-owned in some redraft leagues. So if you're needing a wide receiver, Allen Robinson could be missing a couple weeks for the Chicago Bears in concussion protocol, leaving Darnell Mooney and Anthony Miller to kind of pick up the slack. And Darnell Mooney has looked like the much better player as of recently. And he's a real deep threat, and I feel like him and Foles are going to connect on a couple of those sooner or later. They've been kind of just missing, and it feels like it's right there, like almost it's like on the tip of their tongue. They just got to get it out. But it's coming. So I think Darnell Mooney, great pickup if he's still out on the waivers this week. Probably the number one ad outside of Kendrick Bourne, who with all those 49ers injuries with Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel being out, Kendrick Bourne steps up into a absolutely startable position. I think he's fantasy viable week in, week out at this point. Same with Jordan Reed and Brandon Ayuk, who I'm going to consider pretty much a must-start moving forward. But that 49ers offense is a little bit uglier than we would hope without Jimmy G. So I'm not going to set my hopes too high, but I think those guys are all, based off volume alone, absolutely fantasy viable. But other than that, a wide receiver, guys, I want to touch on a guy who many of you have probably never heard of. He's my favorite wide receiver waiver ad this week. I think he's going to step up in the absence of Kenny Galladay and make some noise, and that is Marvin Hall. Not Marvin Jones Jr. There's actually 2 Marvins on that team, believe it or not. Marvin Hall out of Detroit. I think he's a speedster, quick guy. He's pretty solid size, and he's kind of had a couple nice little games the past couple weeks with Galladay healthy. And my thinking is they'll kind of increase Marvin Jones' workload, but keep him in his original role. Same thing with Danny Amendola a little bit. And then it's really just Marvin Hall after that. So if Galladay misses some significant time, I kind of expect Marvin Hall, to step into that role of Galladay and kind of fill his shoes a little bit, which obviously is a tall task, but I think he could have some big plays, could score some touchdowns, and he's basically free. He's only 3% owned. Yeah, 3% owned in Sleeper app right now, which is crazy to me given that he has had a few nice games in a row now, but his ceiling, I think, is pretty high up there, and he's probably, like I said, my favorite wide receiver waiver ad this week. The only other guys I'm targeting this week at wide receiver are going to be Zach Pascal out of Indianapolis, with T.Y. Hilton kind of struggling through a groin injury. They don't think it's too serious, but it's T.Y. Hilton. He's constantly hurt. Zach Pascal is always the guy who steps up when he's hurt. He's roughly 70-75% owned across most fantasy sites right now, but that's pretty doable in most leagues. That leaves him in about a quarter or so. He might be out there, he might not, but if he is, he's a pretty great ad, especially if T.Y. isn't able to suit up and go. So Auden Tate in Cincinnati, he seems to be really hot and cold, but when he's on the field and gets targets, he seems to produce, and Joe Burrow has a nice little connection with him, so I think he is viable. You're just going to kind of have to pick your spots with him, but good news is 35% owned, so not too bad, probably on your waivers, and probably not going to cost you too much, and he's in that offense, which we've seen is pretty damn explosive and starting to find his groove. Joe Burrow looks phenomenal lately, and if Auden Tate's getting some snaps, then you might as well get a piece, you know. And the only other guy I'll talk about is Damiere Byrd in New England. Sorry, there's a lot of receivers this week, but Damiere Byrd hasn't necessarily made a lot of noise this year, but he has played on over 95% of the snaps for New England, and I feel like he's just kind of finding his role. And his targets have started to increase as the weeks go on. And when you're playing that many snaps, I feel like eventually he's going to have that game where he figures it out and it all clicks and he scores a couple touchdowns. So I just feel like that's coming for him. And I think he's I have it written down here, I think 60% owned, it looks like maybe, in Sleeper app, which is definitely, pretty close to 50%, just half and half. Most leagues he's going to be there. I think he's a great addition for someone who's on the field that much and just has a nice little floor that he brings with it where you just know he's going to have a few catches, get you some points, and he's a pretty safe option. So Damiere Byrd, that's all for receivers. Moving on to the tight end position, obviously big news this week. George Kittle out for essentially the rest of the year, 8+ weeks, meaning Jordan Reed coming back off of IR is going to be a top waiver wire addition, and his backup, Ross Dwelley, is probably going to be up there with him just because Jordan Reed's injury history, we all know. He'll probably be back on IR before the end of the year. So I don't know which one I prefer there. I want to say Jordan Reed just because I know what he brings to the table as an athlete. But Ross Dwelley's probably going to be the safer option season long, competing wise, just in terms of being able to be on the field. You know, they say availability is the best ability. So Ross Dwelley, Jordan Reed, kind of take your pick your poison, if you will. I think either one of them is a pretty good addition this week. One other guy I want to bring up is Eric Ebron. I know he's like 90% owned now, but I did notice he's trending on Sleeper for how many leagues he's been added in, which is kind of surprising to me that he was still out there in that many leagues for a guy that he has been kind of boom or bust this year, but the booms have been well over 15 points. So tight ends have been, hard to come by this year. Not really a lot of production. It's kind of top loaded with the top few guys there, like it has been for a couple years now. But this year's been a struggle at tight end, and Eric Ebron's been a nice little surprise. So if he's still floating out there in your leagues, definitely go snag him up. He's a great add at this point in the year. And if you're adding at this point, he could be someone who wins you a league. So besides him, I just want to talk about Jack Doyle and Ian Thomas, two guys that are quote-unquote starters. Jack Doyle worries me a little bit with Trey Burton and Mo Alley Cox when they're all healthy. Just that's a lot of mouths at one position, especially tight end. It just worries me. But Jack Doyle seems to produce whether or not he's the starter or not. So I don't know. For a waiver ad, he seems like a pretty safe guy. He's available in 50% of leagues roughly, so it's never a bad idea to add someone like that who just has a floor where if you need a guy to go in your lineup, he can fill that void. But Ian Thomas is kind of the same way. He's just a starter who is probably a little bit under-owned at 60% and can get you those games where he scores one or maybe a lucky day he might happen to snag a couple touchdowns. And he's definitely a fantasy viable option. That Panthers offense, especially if CMC's coming back soon, looks to be pretty explosive with Robbie Anderson and guys like DJ Moore. Mike Davis has been awesome in CMC's absence. Just seeing those guys step up has been pretty cool. But at the end of the day, Ian Thomas is kind of an afterthought in that offense. But as a waiver addition, he has a pretty nice floor and ceiling where he might be able to get you a couple touchdowns. So that's about it, guys, as far as the positional guys go. I'll touch on some defenses real quick, and I'll leave you with that. As always, you guys know the drill at this point. I'm a streamer when it comes to defenses and redraft and any dynasty leagues. If I have a defensive in there, I just play them week to week. But only the dynasty I'm in with one dynasty I'm in with the defense is IDP. All the other redraft leagues I'm in have defenses. So I don't really buy into the defensive ideology that much. It's not my thing. But it is pretty easy to predict the patterns and play defenses and score some points with them if you just kind of play the odds a little bit. So what I do is kind of cross-reference DraftKings pricing and rankings for their defense with the defenses that are available in my leagues, and then I look at the data and kind of pick the best matchup that's available for me that week. And some of the ones that might be out there for you guys this week are the Kansas City Chiefs, Washington football team, and the Houston Texans. The Texans have the Jaguars and Jake Luton, so always have that pick six potential with a young, inexperienced quarterback like that. Washington is playing the Giants, who are pretty bad and always have a lot of turnover potential, and that game could just kind of get a little sloppy in my opinion. So we'll see. I just think they could have a nice game there, lots of sack potential as well. And then Kansas City's defense, their matchup is really good as well. It's slipping my mind at the moment, but they're one of the highest ranked defenses across all sites. And they actually just had the Jets, obviously. So I picked them up in a couple of leagues, and I'm going to keep them this week and kind of stay the course with doing my process there. So good luck, you guys, this week. I hope these videos are helping you out. And as always, follow me on Twitter at ChinbagsFF and hit me with any questions you have. I'll be seeing you soon.